My friends, destiny may be delayed, but it can never be denied. No matter how dark the road, what is destined for you will surely come to pass. In this powerful story, you will see how faith can manifest even against impossible odds. Watch closely and watch to the end, for the lessons in this tale may guide you through your own journey in life. In Okota, an African village that rested in between forests and mountains, the moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale glow on the dense forest. A beautiful young woman named Igbutwa ran as fast as her legs could carry her, while breathing heavily and her feet barely touching the ground. Her heart pounded like a talking drum, echoing the terror within her. She clutched a tiny baby against her chest, shielding him from the harsh branches that tore her skin. Behind her, the sound of pounding feet filled the air. The palace guards were chasing her like a mad dog that day. "Kill the child! He must not leave!" one of the guards roared, his voice giving Igbutwa strength to run faster even when she appeared to be so tired. Her eyes were filled with tears. She had no strength left, but she could not stop running. She kept running as fast as she could, for the fate of her child depended on her survival. Ahead, a mighty river roared at the base of a steep mountain. She got to the edge of the mountain and turned around, realizing there was no escape. As the guards were approaching her, their steps made her heart pound even faster, and her eyes filled with tears. She took a deep breath while looking at the river. With one final step, she leaped off the mountain and into the raging waters below. The guards ran to the edge of the mountain. Their eyes widened because by then the river had already swallowed the woman. "They are dead," the leader of the guards said. "Let's go back. Our job is done." Back in the palace, a woman sat on her throne and waited patiently for the arrival of the guards. Her name was Queen Akuku. A wry smile sprang up on her face the moment she saw the guards marching in. "Did you kill the child?" she whispered. "Yes, Your Majesty. The mother and the child are gone," replied the leader of the guards. "Good," exclaimed the queen. "An awesome reward awaits you." Queen Akuku was very happy. The only woman, as well as her son, that would threaten her presence in the palace had been taken care of forever. Little did she know, when the gods orchestrated destiny, it will certainly manifest. The next day, she threw a grand feast where everyone ate and drank to their satisfaction, but only a few guards knew exactly why she did it. In Ogbo, a village very far away from Okuta, the sun had barely risen when Jiboko, an old farmer, walked through the forest. As he passed by a cluster of palm trees, he heard something strange, the voice of a crying baby. Frowning, he looked towards the direction of the sound, and there he saw a baby, carefully wrapped in linen clothing, his tiny hands reaching out while crying. Jiboko was surprised. "A child? Alone in the forest?" he whispered. The hunter knelt and carried the baby with his heart full of joy. "Who could have left such a precious soul to the mercy of the wild?" he said, while staring at the baby. He glanced around. No mother, no footprint, only silence. Jiboko sighed. "You must be a gift from the gods," he said. He took the child home that day. His wife, Osimo, was filled with shock when she saw the baby. "A child?" she whispered. "Yes," said Jiboko. "I found him in the forest. Someone left him there." He handed the child over to her, and she was so excited. For many years, Jiboko and Osimo were married without a child. They were excited
to have the child in their home, and so he was called Kufio. Kufio grew up an obedient, hardworking, and very decent boy. He goes hunting with Jiboko and do house chores with Osimo. Kufio was on his way to the village stream one evening when he saw Nene Kumbia, the oldest woman in that village, carrying a clay pot of water on her head. She was walking slowly and looking very weak. Immediately Kufio saw her. He kept his clay pot at the foot of the huge palm tree and said, "Nene Kumbia, let me help you." "Don't worry, your mother will be waiting for you," protested Nene Kumbia. "I'll tell her exactly what happened," said Kufio. "Please, let me help you." When Nene Kumbia saw that Kufio was determined to help, she finally accepted his offer. He carried a clay pot from her, while the old woman had to walk behind him. He walked faster, and so he got to the hut before Nene Kumbia. After dropping Nene Kumbia's clay pot at her hut, Kufio returned immediately and he met the old woman on his way. "Kufio, as long as you live, no evil plan against you shall succeed," Nene Kumbia prayed silently as the boy was running back to the stream. This silent prayer of Nene Kumbia was answered by God, and he manifested in Kufio's life the way he never imagined. By the time he got back home that day, Osimo was already worried. "What happened, Kufio?" she inquired. "You spent so much time at the stream today." "I'm sorry, mother," pleaded Kufio. "I saw Nene Kumbia on the way, and I helped her carry her clay pot to her hut before I went to the stream." Even at that tender age, Kufio wouldn't hesitate to lend a helping hand to anyone in need, especially the old villagers who had no one to take care of them. He believed kindness is a gift to be given to everyone, and so he became everyone's favorite in Ugbo. Kufio's act of kindness made everyone in that village to be happy with him. Villagers smiled at him whenever they see him, and they wished their children could be just like him. Many years later, Kufio's adoptive parents died, and he had to work in the palace as a maid just to sustain himself. But life was cruel. He was mistreated, given only scrap to eat, and ordered to do the hardest work. No one respected him, but his hard work spoke for him. In spite of the ugly treatment given to him, you will always find a charming smile on his face while he is working. Some years later, the result of his hard work started manifesting. The first daughter of the king, Princess Naya, fell in love with him. By that time, Princess Naya was not the only one pleased with Kufio. Her younger sisters also found favor in him. The three princesses often whisper sweet words behind Kufio's back whenever they are together. Princess Naya was very proud of Kufio, and her sisters were in support of their relationship. Princess Naya likes the way Kufio did his job, and so she couldn't take her eyes away from him whenever he is working. Whispers spread through the village like wildfire. The princess with the maid servant? What a shameful relationship! There was no one in Ugbo who heard about the relationship between Kufio and Princess Naya that wasn't displeased with the princess. Princess Naya's parents were very furious. Her mother, Kunarikwo, had plans for her to marry a nobleman, and her father, King Numbolo, was in support of it. They believed Kufio was a disgrace. One morning, Kufio was in the palace when some visitors arrived. They were all gorgeously dressed, as if they were going for a festival. As Kufio was serving the visitors water to drink, one of them called him and yelled, "You served me water in a dirty cup?" "That's not true. I personally washed all the cups, and they are all very clean," Kufio explained with a bow together with a cheerful smile. "Get away from here!" screamed Queen Arikwo. I can see you really want to run this meeting. With his eyes full of tears and so much pain in his heart, Kufio walked out of the gathering back to his chamber. If only he knew it was a deliberate act for the visitor to ridicule him, he wouldn't have felt so bad that day. Indeed, the one who ridiculed him was a man Princess Naya's parents wanted her to get married to. In an attempt to get Kufio out of the way, the queen hatched a plan. She ordered the palace guard to plant some royal bangles in Kufio's room, and he did. That evening, it was announced that the royal bangles are missing from the queen's closet. The palace guards searched the entire village until the royal bangles were found in Kufio's chamber. Kufio was grabbed immediately and thrown into the darkest prison in Ogbo. While he sat in the cold prison cell, the kingdom of Okuta was falling deeper into crisis. Firstly, they lost Queen Akuku, and secondly, the king became very sick and at the point of death. His voice was weak as he spoke to his chiefs. I will not die until I see the next king. The chiefs were surprised because they knew the king had no son and no heir to the throne. Fortunately, the elders consulted a very powerful chief priest, and they were told, the heir to the throne of Okuta is alive. But the king had no son, said one of the chiefs. The chief priest did some incantations and then pointed his staff at the wall. Suddenly, an image appeared on the wall, and it was like a movie. They watched with so much interest how a palace maid whispered to Queen Akuku, Your Majesty, the king is the father of Igbutwa's son. He is the heir to the throne. That's impossible. Kill them both before the sun sets. Queen Akuku screamed in anger. The guards set out in search of Igbutwa and her son, but before they could get to her, an old woman had already told her to flee with her son. Run away from Okuta right now. They are after your son's life, the old woman said, and Igbutwa acted very fast. She quickly wrapped her baby in linen clothing and ran into the forest. She ran very fast without looking back until she started losing strength. At that point, she stopped running, but she never stopped walking. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching from behind, and that was when she started running again. She tried to run faster, but those pursuing her covered the distance at a great speed. In an attempt to save her son, she walked away from the bush path and carefully laid him under some bushes. With the footsteps still approaching and her eyes full of tears, she ran away from the hidden baby. She kept running while the guards were coming after her. The chiefs watched with intense fear as Igbutwa ran to the mountain and jumped into the river just as the palace guards were approaching. All of them were so sad, but the show wasn't ended yet. They watched a hunter carrying the baby, after which he took him home. The world went blank, and the chief priest said, That baby is the heir to the throne of Okuta Kingdom. His name is Kufia, and he is in Ugbo right now. The chiefs of Okuta were greatly amazed, but the chief priest continued, Kufia's life is in danger right now. Act very fast, unless you want to see him dead. Without wasting any more time, the chiefs took the news to the king. Your Majesty, we know where the heir to the throne is, they said to the king. Are you sure? The king asked, his voice very weak. Yes, his name is Kufio, answered one of the chiefs. He was left in the forest as a baby and raised by a hunter in Ugbo. He is the true heir to the throne. The king's eyes widened in shock. Find him, he ordered. Immediately the chiefs left. They sent for Ekito, the best spy in Ukuta. We just discovered that the heir to the throne is currently in Ugbo. One of the chiefs said to Ekito, "Go now and find out if he's really there. Remember, this is very urgent." As a result of the urgency of the task, Ekito stepped into action the moment the assignment was given to him. He embarked on the journey to Ogbo the moment he left the courtyard. It was a very long journey, but at last he made it to Ogbo, where he discovered that Kufio was rotting in prison. Ekito rushed back to Ogbo and delivered the sad news to the chiefs. Indeed, it was so sad that the heir to a throne is rotting in a prison in a faraway land. While the chiefs and elders of Okuta were trying to figure out how to get their prince back home, Princess Naya was secretly spending time with Kufio in his dark cell. Words got to Queen Arikwo, and a moment later she was in the cell. The queen looked so surprised and disappointed when she saw the princess very comfortable in Kufio's dark cell. "What are you doing here? Why are you trying to disgrace the family?" Queen Ariko asked her daughter with a terrifying voice. Princess Naya tried to explain, but her mother stormed out of the cell, looking so frustrated and embarrassed. That moment, a plan to put an end to this challenge was hatched. Queen Ariko went to the king and said, "Your Highness, that poor maid had bewitched our daughter, Princess Naya." "Are you sure about that?" asked the king. "Yes, I'm very sure, Your Highness," replied Queen Ariko. "First, he stole the royal bangle. Now, he had bewitched our daughter. The punishment is death," the king said in anger, and the queen was joyful about the decision. The palace of Ogbo was packed with angry villagers. They all believed Kufio deserved to die. Standing among the crowd was Kufio. He had been tortured severely. His face was bruised, but his pride very much intact. King Nobolo sat with Queen Ariko beside him, while his eyes were burning with hatred for Kufio. "This man committed a grievous crime against the kingdom of Ogbo," the king roared. "For that, he shall be executed today." Suddenly, a deep war cry echoed from the forest. The villagers were confused as Okuta's warriors burst into their midst, their sword glittering under the sun. The leader of the warriors stepped forward and said, "Release our prince, or you face the wrath of Okuta." Everybody was surprised because they never knew Kufio was a prince. King Nobolo was unshaken. "I don't know what you're talking about, but this man here committed a grievous crime against my land. He must face judgment," the king exclaimed with boldness. The warriors of Okuta drew their sword and stepped forward, ready for battle. Ugbo's warriors were ready for battle as well. They marched forward, accepting the challenge with so much confidence. Some villagers screamed as they flew away in different directions. Some ran away for safety, while others stayed back to watch. Suddenly, a voice rang through the crowd. "Father, stop!" Princess Naya walked past the warriors and stood close to Kufio. "If you must execute him, then you shall execute me too," declared Princess Naya. "What madness is this?" King Nobolo thundered. Before he could recover, two more princesses, Edemo and Isiko, stepped forward and stood beside their sister. "If Naya goes, then so shall we," they said. The villagers stood frozen. The king's hands trembled. "Have you all lost your senses? This man is a criminal." It was then that another voice spoke. "Your Highness, he is innocent." All eyes turned towards a palace guard who had stepped forward, his head bowed while kneeling down. "You said what?" King Nobolo asked with so much anger. "Please forgive me, my king." "But Kufio was framed," pleaded the guard. "He did not steal the secret bangles. The queen ordered me to plant them in his chamber." The crowd erupted into whispers. The king's eyes darted to his wife, who was trembling her face drained of color. "Is that true?" demanded the king. The queen fell to her knees, sobbing. "I feared he would mar the beautiful plans we had for Princess Naya." A heavy silence fell over the square. It was unbelievable. The king felt so bad that his wife could do such a thing. "I have been blinded by hatred. My daughters have shown me the truth," the king cried out in a loud voice. King Nobolo turned to the warriors of Okuta and said, "Take your prince. The enmity between our villages ends today." A loud roar of celebration erupted. The warriors dropped their weapons, and the people of Ugbo shared. Wine was brought out, and the two villages that were once ready for war a few moments ago started feasting in a grand style. There was enough food and drink for everyone there that day. The next day, Kufio and the warriors arrived at Okuta in a grand style. Kufio rode majestically on a magnificent horse, his posture displaying strength and confidence. Behind him were the warriors on their horses, riding joyfully as they chanted songs of victory. The rhythm of their voices echoed through the land like the roar of a mighty river. The villagers, overcome with joy, lined the streets, clapping, dancing, and singing praises. Truly, their lost prince had been found. As they approached the palace gates, the drummers intensified their beats. Kufio's heart pounded with anticipation. He had finally come home. The others, dressed in their ceremonial robes, led him straight to his father's chamber. The air inside the royal chamber was heavy with the scent of the burning incense. The sick king laid motionless on his grand bed, his frail body wrapped in fine royal fabric. The moment his weak eyes beheld Kufio, a faint but contented smile crept across his face, and then, just as if he had been holding on for this moment, he exhaled deeply and closed his eyes. "Your Majesty, the prince is here," one of the warriors said softly, kneeling beside the king's bed. The king didn't respond. "Father, how are you?" Kufio asked, his voice thick with emotion. Again, there was no response. It was then that the weight of reality sank into the room that day. "The king is gone," an elder announced solemnly, his voice laced with sorrow. A deep hush fell upon the chamber. The grief in Kufio's heart was unlike anything he had ever felt before. His joy of reuniting with his father was cruelly replaced with sorrow. They left the king's chamber and moved over to the courtyard. Kufio stood there, filled with grief and thinking about the father he never had a chance to truly know. Then, just as the air grew thick with mourning, an old woman stepped into the palace. She moved with a quiet dignity, her presence demanding attention even without a single word. One of the elders recognized her the moment she got to their midst. "Ibutra!" the elders exclaimed, and everyone was astonished. Before anyone could say one more word, Ibutra hugged Kufio so tight and then said, "I knew you would not die." Kufio was confused. He never knew exactly what to do till the chief said to him, "This is Ibutra, your biological mother." "My mother?" Kufio whispered in disbelief. "Enough of these mysteries." "Yes, you are my son," said Ibutra. But we were told you died in the river a long time ago," a warrior stammered. "No, I did not die," Ibutra said. "As you can see, I'm alive. Although life had been very tough since I left Ukuta, but I'm very much alive." Then the courtyard was filled with murmurings. Kufio, overwhelmed by emotions, pulled his mother into a tight embrace. The sorrow of losing his father was overshadowed by the joy of rediscovering the mother he had never known. "But how did you survive after jumping into the river?" an elder asked, his voice trembling with curiosity. Ibutra took a deep breath and began the tale of survival. She narrated the story with so much pains in her heart. When she leaped into the river that fateful night, she refused to surrender to death. The waters were strong, but her will was stronger. Her determination to survive gave her strength to swim for hours before she got so tired. Just as she thought all hope was lost, a fisherman saw her struggling. He pulled her into his boat and took her home. The fisherman's wife, Atono, was a kind woman. She nursed Igbutwa back to health and welcomed her into their family. She felt very safe with the fisherman and his family. Igbutwa laughed again after the horrible experience. She was not treated like a stranger, but like a dear sister. They fished together, cooked together, and built a new life together. Igbutwa was very happy with her new home, but happiness, like the morning dew, does not last forever. One evening, Atona and her husband went fishing. The sea was angry that day. The waves rose like giants, swallowing every boat that came across its way. Unfortunately, Atona and her husband never returned that night. Igbutwa waited and waited, but the fisherman and his wife were gone with the wave. Igbutwa mourned them as she had mourned everything else she had lost in life. But she could not remain in sorrow for long. They had children, two young innocent souls who needed a mother, and so Igbutwa became their guardian. Many men came to Igbutwa offering marriage. Some brought gifts, others promised wealth, but she refused them all. Every time temptation whispered in her ear, she would say to herself, "Remember, you are the mother of a king." For that reason, she stayed away from men. Igbutwa found joy in raising the two beautiful children. They played, they laughed, and they enjoyed each other's company. But fate is never kind for long. Another tragedy struck, and her heart was once again drowned in sorrow. One fateful morning, she woke up with a heart full of joy. It was a market day in Ogbo, a day when traders from nearby villages gathered to sell either goods or products. She left very early that morning, carrying a basket of dried fish on her head. "Please, be good and remain safe," she said to the children as she was walking away. The children smiled and waved her goodbye as she was leaving. As she was going to the market, a heavy cloud suddenly covered the sky. The air grew still, and the village elders murmured that it was a bad omen. She ignored the warnings and continued her journey. By midday, the marketplace was full of noise, the sound of bargaining and laughter. Igbutwa was selling very well, and by afternoon, her baskets were almost empty. Suddenly, Igbutwa heard a loud cry, "Fire! Fire!" She turned around, and her heart skipped a beat. From where she stood, she could see thick black smoke rising from the direction of her home. Igbutwa's basket crashed to the ground as she ran with her feet kicking up dust, her chest tightened, and her hands trembling. "Please, let my children be safe," she prayed as she ran back home. As she got closer to her home, the scene before her sent a sharp knife through her soul. Behold, her home was in flame. Villagers were running back and forth, shouting while trying to put out the fire. But it was too late. The roof collapsed and the fire roared like a hungry beast. Unfortunately, the fire started while the children were inside the hut, and there was no way to rescue them. They were gone with the flame. Igbutwa wailed in agony. She was lost in a world of pain, a world where her laughter was gone forever. That night, as the village mourned, Igbutwa sat in front of the ashes of her home, looking so sad. She was no longer the strong woman they once knew. She was just a woman who had lost everything. And so, Igbutwa's grief knew no bound. She was so sad, and nothing could make her happy. She moved over to the forest, where she lived alone. so far away from everyone. She remained in the forest for years until an old woman came to her one morning. The woman was dressed in white. "Woman, your years of agony are over. Go over to Okuta. Your son is now the king," the old woman said, and then disappeared. Enough of the story. A sheep screamed in excitement. "Bring the finest wine. Let's celebrate the arrival of our new king, the arrival of the king's mother, and the departure of our old king." This declaration spread across Okuta like a wildfire. Celebration came in 3 dimensions. They celebrated the arrival of the prince, the joyful passing of the king, and the arrival of the mother of the new king. With the return of the king and his mother, the kingdom of Okuta was never the same again. Some days later, as torches lit the sky and drums filled the air, Kufio and Princess Naya sat together. "Did you mean what you said that day?" asked Kufio. She smiled. "That I would die for you? Yes, but I would rather live for you." They later got married, and the 2 villages celebrated the union of their children, a union that ended the enmity between the 2 villages. From that day, no war ever broke out between the 2 villages again. They lived in harmony, proving that even the deepest hatred can be healed by justice, truth, and love. The story of Okuta and Ogbo became a legend told for generations. It taught everyone that no matter how well hidden, the truth will always prevail. It also taught the villagers that true love is fearless and that hatred blinds, but love opens the eyes. From the story, the villagers also learned that fear would always lead to destruction. For more interesting story, kindly subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on our videos.